and this is before the ice baths got popular. It was cold and hot treatments, back and forth, back and forth. It would help you heal up, and it makes sense, right? A lot of people that use it right now is just sort of this therapeutic thing to sort of improve health and maybe even lose some weight.
What does POTS really stand for? P is postural, O is orthostatic, T is tachycardia, and S is syndrome. So when you go from sitting to standing, changing posture, your blood pressure can adapt quickly enough so your heart rate goes up, causing all these symptoms.
That jurisdiction of the sheriff is really the most powerful guard and protector of the rights of the people than any other institution our founders created here.
Today we're going to talk about a hot topic, no pun intended. What happens to your body when you do a cold plunge?
Well, I can't put that hot topic. I wasn't expecting that, man. I was thinking this is going to be a cold-hearted subject today. Ultimately, when you do a cold, it's really popular today, right? And
Well,
so,
it's really popular today, but interestingly enough, it was discovered like 3,500 years BC. That's a
yeah.
long time ago.
Well, Hippocrates was a big fan of the idea of cold. And what happens is, and it makes sense, is when you go into a colder environment than your body's used to, and many times the water in these cases is somewhere between like 55 and about 69 degrees. So it's cold. It's not like sub-freezing, but it's really feels freezing. But the bottom line is your vessels constrict and all your heat sort of comes inside because it's trying to preserve that, right? And so when you get out of that, your vessels then dilate and pushes the blood immediately out. And the idea behind it is it improves healing because it would improve blood flow. And that would make a lot of sense.
It's been used for long periods of time in athletic rooms for sports injuries.
Oh, yeah. People take ice baths. I mean, that's a big thing in the NFL right now. The players do that. And
Get off the field, take an ice bath.
yeah, certainly. And way back when, and this is before the ice baths got popular, it was cold and hot treatments, back and forth, back and forth. And I remember doing that a little bit when I was used to say was an athlete, but it would help you heal up, and it makes sense, right? A lot of people that use it right now is just sort of this therapeutic thing to sort of improve health and maybe even lose some weight.
Multiple patients that we've seen in the clinic have often talked about how it improves this thing called chronic anxiety or depression. And when you think about what happens with the physiology of the ice bath is, of course, vasoconstriction happens. Everything kind of comes to a slow pulse, no pun intended, again. And once you get out of that ice bath, the body is surged with blood, oxygen, and nutrients that flow to the tissues. So here comes that healing power with a surge.
Well, we don't really think about it too much, but how about the neurotransmitter aspect of it? When you achieve something out there that you thought was hard and you did it, maybe you go work out, maybe you go for a run, there's something that we would be talking about there, dopamine, right? We get that dopamine hit, right? Ice baths do the same thing. As soon as you get out, you get that dopamine surge, and it's like a sense of achievement. So you do feel better about oneself. So from an anti-anxiety and antidepressant standpoint, that actually can be pretty good.
And it doesn't take a medication, and it doesn't really take any clinician monitoring to simply do an ice bath. Let's talk maybe a little bit about resources. Do you need to have a ice bath in your backyard in order to do a cold plunge?
No, there are some though that you can get portable that actually you can fill up and get some ice. You could do that. You can get those people live on a farm, you get one of those old feeding troughs and do it pretty easy. But ultimately then you got to get ice, right? So you could do
Or
this
some sort of thermal monitoring
Yeah.
device.
Totally. And it doesn't really have to be a certain I said a moment ago between 55 and 69. It doesn't have to be there to sort of create that effect. You could, for example, work your way down and go about 75 degrees, or just a cold shower. Like, don't turn it on hot. That will do the same thing, and actually probably working your way into more cold for more long is probably a good thing. So I encourage people when you're starting that just to start small, start short. And, it's recommended about 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. You don't need to go like an hour. So it's a short thing that does some long-term effects positively. So you could even do a cold shower, which is not going to be 55 degrees, but it might feel like it, but you can actually get some benefits like that.
Would you recommend that somebody just put their feet in and try 10 minutes with their feet in the cold bathtub first, or just go cold plunge all the way into the shower?
No, you can try the feet first. Because ultimately, if you go up to your neck or even get submerged in it, like some people do, like every year there's these polar bear plunge kind of things, and people will go to a lake that is frozen like that, and they'll dive in and jump in it and go underwater and come back out, and they call it the polar bear plunge. And it's challenging, I remember doing that one year when I was on the police department, getting out there and jumping in that cold water, and the first thing you get is that sort of that lose your breath, yeah, like, oh my gosh, you think you're going to die, and it's really cold. So if people want to start, low grade like that, just dip your feet in a little bucket of water.
And probably somebody who's got blood pressure instabilities or blood sugar instabilities is probably somebody that wants to talk to a clinician or have some guidance before they just take the cold plunge.
Yeah, if you got heart disease or something, man, that can really shock the system. So don't just do that willy-nilly without some kind of a guidance. But as a general principle, that use as a therapy would be very good for most people. And of course, there's varying times and submersion levels and temperatures and length of time for people, but probably some of that for everybody would be a good thing.
So do you think that we should take the plunge?
Yeah, we did when we got married, didn't we? Right? There you go, man. Come on. No, I think that everybody should do that. I
So
honestly
you think it's
do.
here to stay? It's not just a fad.
I think it's here to stay because it makes sense, right? You
And
think
it's been
about-
around since 3500 BC.
Yeah.
We see it in all the universities across the country. Now it's
Yeah.
kind of come to the mainstream backyard.
When you get down to some of these older remedies, older things that we're talking about, they've been around for thousands of years. There's a reason they've stood the test of time, and that's kind of fascinating when you look at this whole idea of standing the test of time and kind of what we do. Some of these things like cold plunge have been around so long they prove themselves worthy. So getting back to the basics of these foundational things like this are good. So consider taking the plunge, the cold plunge, and you might see that does a body good.
POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome.
What is that? Find out next.
And when you navigate through these economies with people, here's what happens. We want to hold their hand through it, let them know when it's time to buy, sell, reallocate, get out of Dodge. Because a lot of times when you're struck with fear does two things. Number one, it can paralyze, and people just put their head in the sand and say, I'm just going to forget about it and hopefully it gets better. Or it causes you to make a wrong decision. And this is why we are here, is to help people navigate through the political quagmire nonsense that's going on, the economic malaise, and the absolute collapse that we're seeing. And when our freedoms are eroding, our political freedoms, our economic freedoms, our personal freedoms, our religious freedoms, our health freedoms, they're all tied together. But you know what doesn't need to erode with that? Our finances.
KirkElliottPhD.com/Sherwood.
There's a lot of talk these days about human enhancement.
Terms like biohacking, bioharmonizing, biosynergizing, stacking, resilience, and anti-fragility.
In our clinic, the Functional Medical Institute, we've been helping people of all shapes, sizes, and backgrounds improve their quality of their physiology and maximize their lives.
So, you can follow the latest fads and gimmicks and maybe find some things that work for you.
Or you can add Kingdom Fuel to your daily regimen right now.
It's the simple start to a transformed life.
Our unique meal shakes are balanced, Low glycemic, rich in fiber with 20 grams of clean protein, essential vitamins and minerals, healthy fats, and organic fruits and vegetables. Kingdom Fuel is vegan with a complete amino acid profile.
No gimmicks, just proven results.
Start today at sherwood.tv/fuel.
Hey there, Kevin Sorbo here. Now, deep down, we know this. We're more than just a brain and a body. We're a spirit, we're a soul, and we're also a physical temple. If you hit the wall when you're trying to improve one aspect of your being, it's probably because, well, other aspects are sabotaging our success. So that's why diets don't work. And frankly, why so much conventional wisdom from our so-called medical establishments falls flat. Doctors Michele and Mark Sherwood have a very different approach. I should know because I happen to be one of their patients. They address the whole person to get to know you, your challenges, and more importantly, what your goals are. Then they offer a complete plan that addresses your unique biology and your heart. They'll help you discover what you need to experience transformation. So find out more at sherwood.tv/sorbo. That's sherwood.tv/sorbo, or see the link before. Now, I'm heading for a workout. You should be going for a workout too. All right, guys. God bless.
Today's topic is a common topic, more common than you think, a topic called POTS. Well, what does that stand for? It stands for postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome.
We need to stay with POTS probably for most people. Funny thing about that, I've heard a lot of people recently that have been quote unquote diagnosed with POTS. It's more common today. And I've actually heard people tie it to a consequence and sort of associated with even well-known viruses that we've been subjected to recently.
Well, oftentimes it is tied to a consequence, the consequence of being acutely ill for long periods of time. It could be a tick-borne illness. It could be mold illness. It could be the Epstein-Barr virus. It could be any number of things that just exhaust the adrenals and create this instability of the blood pressure to normalize itself from sitting to standing. What does POTS really stand for? P is postural, O is orthostatic, T is tachycardia, and S is syndrome. So when you go from sitting to standing, changing posture, your blood pressure can't adapt quickly enough, so your heart rate goes up, causing all these symptoms like dizziness, lightheadedness, faintness, feeling like you're going to pass out, and just a syndrome of weakness.
We've seen that a lot lately. And anytime I hear the word syndrome, as a general rule, I'm thinking, okay, I don't want to own that. I think that that's a group of symptoms that are classified as a quote unquote syndrome, but is it a condition or is it a response, a result of many, many symptoms that result from something else? I think it's the latter. And I look at that whole idea, if it's really having a hard time controlling blood pressure, I want to get the vascular system improved. I want to figure out what impairs that. I want to figure out maybe they've got some electrolyte imbalances, maybe that they have some nitric oxide deficiencies, maybe they're eating inflammatory foods, and all those areas really do play a part.
When we do find that it's more common in young women, the ages of 15 to 50, it's more common. Again, after a consequential illness, and oftentimes that system is unfit.
Yep.
So starting to slowly return to exercise, where you start moving the system or ambulating the system more frequently, increasing the fitness level. What pumps blood back to the heart is going to be the muscles in the lower legs. So if the lower legs are weak, there may be an increase in that syndrome of POTS.
Yep.
Something else that really helps is compression stockings. I know they're very uncomfortable. You can get over-the-counter stockings that have less millimeters of mercury in the compression, so they aren't as hard to get on and they're not as uncomfortable in the heat. But those compression stockings really help return blood to the heart in a system that may have perhaps weak valves in the vessels of the legs. And that's a genetic inherited issue that oftentimes without compression stockings, we can't ever get ahead of.
Well, you mentioned two things right there, really kind of cool. One of the signs of that is an accumulation of fluid lower because it doesn't have the power to get it back, which would make sense with the dizziness. Another thing, when you talk about exercise, a lot of people really get hung up on that and get told they can't exercise, but they can. It's called a recumbent bike. Sit down there and pedal your legs. You're not going from sitting to standing. You're not moving that up and down. You're working those legs. You're working that heart. That is incredibly beneficial for conditions like this.
Yes, there is also, if we don't think about it, we can become dehydrated because we're not drinking enough fluid. And then if we're not drinking enough fluid, oftentimes we get low in electrolytes. So simply adding a little scoop of Celtic or Himalayan salt or even a balanced electrolytes to water can help improve the nutrients that the adrenals need to actually make those stress hormones. If the adrenals get exhausted or there's an imbalance in the ability to make stress hormones, there might be an inability to maintain blood pressure. Also, if those things don't work, there, of course, are medications that we can reach for as a last resort.
Well, and they would be last resort because I think that what we've seen a lot of times is we'll tell people to just have a little bit of water with maybe a half teaspoon or quarter teaspoon of one of those salts. You can use, and it's one of my favorites, you can use like an ATP Ignite or an ATP Ignite workout, which has electrolytes. We're talking about, that calcium, potassium, sodium, those things like that. And even if you sweat a lot, right? Let's think about this. You could actually drain those electrolytes out there. So even while you're exercising, sitting down, you would want to replete with those electrolytes and sort of, it's not that you want to sit on a recumbent bike and do that all the time. You eventually want to stand up, but just stand up slowly and think about from sitting to standing slowly until you get that body time to catch up. And I think you can get out of that syndrome personally.
One of the tricks that we always teach people is focus your eyes on a point in the distance and then stand up if you have POTS or postural orthostatic tachycardic syndrome.
Yeah, and that works great. And we've seen this a lot of times. And I think that the downside of this is that people that sort of have been quote unquote diagnosed with POTS, they begin to say, I have POTS, and they realize they never realize they can't get out of that, but they can. And maybe they're on a blood pressure, like some beta blocker or something like that.
Isostigmine.
Totally. They're on that. Can you get off? The answer is yes, but you need some guidance through clinician help like we're talking about to sort of work your way out of that syndrome and basically get it fixed. So if you're out there and you know somebody or you've been quote unquote diagnosed with the POTS syndrome, so to speak of, there are ways out. You can listen to this particular segment over and over again to get some tips and employ each of these, and you can perhaps get free from that crazy POTS syndrome. What does our Constitution really mean? Find out next with our constitutional attorney expert, Chris Ann Hall.
Let's get real. Most emergency food is just as bad for you as any other choice in the standard American diet. And that's just sad.
We don't just need food. We need highly nutritional food.
We don't just want to survive food shortages. We are meant to thrive in adversity.
Complete your daily nutrition and have shelf-stable Kingdom Fuel as a cornerstone of your food supply.
Don't sacrifice your health or your taste buds.
Stock up on Kingdom Fuel now.
And when you navigate through these economies with people, here's what happens. We want to hold their hand through it, let them know when it's time to buy, sell, reallocate, get out of Dodge. Because a lot of times when you're struck with fear does two things. Number one, it can paralyze, and people just put their head in the sand and say, I'm just going to forget about it and hopefully it gets better. Or it causes you to make a wrong decision. And this is why we are here, is to help people navigate through the political quagmire nonsense that's going on, the economic malaise, and the absolute collapse that we're seeing. And when our freedoms are eroding, our political freedoms, our economic freedoms, our personal freedoms, our religious freedoms, our health freedoms, they're all tied together. But you know what doesn't need to erode with that? Our finances.
KirkElliottPhD.com/Sherwood.
We have a brand new documentary out called Non-Compliant to the Sheriff. Now, our first documentary, Non-Compliant, and our second documentary, Non-Compliant 2, are both available at noncompliantmovie.com. The first documentary is all about the duty and the role of the state to be a check and balance on the federal government, state and local government. So if you haven't seen that yet, let me please recommend that you go to noncompliantmovie.com and watch the first documentary, available to you at no cost. It is going to be life-changing, and we have hundreds of thousands of 5-star reviews and people all over the world sending us messages about how this message is so life-changing. And it's a global message because, really, it's about your inherent rights. It's about why government is designed for one purpose. The purpose is to secure your rights, and how our founders put together our governments in order to retain the power by the people to be a check and balance on government through state and local government. And from that, we were inspired to create Non-Compliant to the Sheriff. Now, I have been for nearly a decade, traveling around the country teaching sheriffs and deputies a 3-hour continuing education course, all about the role and the duty of the sheriff, the history of the sheriff's role and duty to secure our rights, not to violate them. We have a whole section on the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, what our sheriffs and their deputies need to know not to be sued. And then we have a section on the jurisdiction of the sheriff, which is so incredibly important. That jurisdiction of the sheriff is really the most powerful guard and protector of the rights of the people than any other institution our founders created here in these United States of America through our constitutional republic. And it's from that course that I had sheriffs telling me, this is inspirational. What you've taught us in these 3 hours is just simply life-changing. As a matter of fact, I've taught this at big conferences where I taught the sheriffs of 17 states all at one time. And I had sheriffs coming up to me immediately before I even got off the stage saying, I've been on the phone changing policies already based on what we learned from you. And we thought to ourselves, you know what? We need the people to know this information. We need the people to know this, number one, so that they can make sure the candidates they have for sheriff know the proper role and duty of the sheriff. So we can be sure to have constitutionally minded sheriffs. Number two, because if you have a constitutional sheriff, if the body of the people are not in support of that sheriff cannot be who they want to be and who they're required to be. And number three, it empowers sheriffs who already have that inclination. In a world that is full of propaganda like defund the police and all of our law enforcement is evil. You see it all over the news. You see wicked politicians propagating this stuff. We knew we had to create Non-Compliant to the Sheriff to show people what's really happening at the level of the sheriff that the media will not show you. There are sheriffs all over America who are standing up in defiance of unconstitutional laws and orders and edicts, in defense of the property rights of the people, and they've been doing this for years. But the politicians and the media do not want you to know this. They do not want you to know what sheriffs are doing successfully, regularly, to stand for people's rights, because this is how government's supposed to really, really work. Now, what we do with non-compliant 2 is we take 2 real life situations, 2 events that actually happened. A pastor who refused to shut down his church over COVID, and a sheriff who arrested him for it. And a pastor who refused to shut down for COVID, and a sheriff who said, I'll go to jail to keep you open. And how this 2 incidents actually impacted and changed their states, and even all of these United States, all boiled down to what a sheriff would or would not do. This film is brand new, available at noncompliantmovie.com only right now. Pretty soon we're going to make it available on DVD, so maybe by the time you see this, it will be available on DVD at noncompliantmovie.com. But we're already getting messages about how this is life-changing. And to be honest, if you share this with your sheriff might be one who has watched this movie and come back to us and asked us to come and train their deputies. noncompliantmovie.com. It will be life-changing.
Hey there, Kevin Sorbo here. Now, deep down, we know this. We're more than just a brain and a body. We're a spirit, we're a soul, and we're also a physical temple. If you hit the wall when you're trying to improve one aspect of your being, it's probably because, well, other aspects are sabotaging our success. So that's why diets don't work. And frankly, why so much conventional wisdom from our so-called medical establishments falls flat. Doctors Michele and Mark Sherwood have a very different approach. I should know because I happen to be one of their patients. They address the whole person to get to know you, your challenges, and more importantly, what your goals are. Then they offer a complete plan that addresses your unique biology and your heart. They'll help you discover what you need to experience transformation. So find out more at sherwood.tv/sorbo. That's sherwood.tv/sorbo, or see the link before. Now, I'm heading for a workout. You should be going for a workout too. All right, guys. God bless.
Introducing OK Movie Stream, your ticket to a world of cinematic classics and wonders, right from the heart of Oklahoma and the surrounding areas.
The Neals are moving to Oklahoma.
Dive into a world of captivating stories and extraordinary talent, all on OK Movie Stream.
Oh yeah, I did. You see, I gave you a crazy look because I
Choose the option that suits you best. Watch for free with commercials, binge watch your favorites for 3 days, or unlock ad-free streaming for just $10 a year. Join the OK Movie Stream community today and embark on a cinematic journey like never before.